All right, in this video, we are going to talk about getting input from the user in Java. So before we get into the details of that, just a little overview of packages. A package is a collection of related classes. So the organization of a Java program, we didn't talk about expression or token. We pretty much started at statement. So, and then we said that statements are organized into named sequences called methods. Right, a class is a collection of methods, and so a package would just be a collection of related classes. Okay, so what we need to do for the input part of this is to issue an import statement, and the import statement tells the compiler to import a package. Okay, and so if you want to get input from a user, you're going to have to import one of two classes. There are others, but for us, we'll just start with scanner and then JOption pane. So at the very beginning of your source code file, you'll need to have this import statement, and then the package name is java.util, and then the class that we want to import is scanner. Okay, so this tells Java to look at the package called java.util and import the class called scanner. There is a package that is automatically imported, and that package is java.lang. So for instance, we've used string and the math class without importing those classes. That's because those classes are in the java.lang package, and we don't have to issue an import statement for that package. It's automatically important, but everything else will have to issue this an import statement similar to this one. Okay, so initially what we are going to do is to use two classes to get input from the user. The scanner class is one approach, and that's found in the package java.util. There is another approach, and that is with the JOption pane class. That is found in a package called javix.swing. And these are two totally different approaches, as we will see. Okay, so in this video, we are going to talk about the scanner class, and then I will put the JOption pane class in a separate video. Okay, so the scanner class uses the console to get input, and by console, what I mean is this little part down here in JGrasp. Okay, and with scanner, right, for each of the 8 primitive types, and it specifically, and string as well. For us, mainly, we are going to be talking about strings, ints, and doubles, right? So for each of those, scanner is going to use a different method to capture the user input. So the most commonly used ones are next line for string, next int when you want input that's an whole number or an int, and then next double, you would use that if you wanted, say, the user to type in a decimal number. So if you want the user to type in some words, you would use the next line method in the scanner class. If you want the user to type in a whole number, and you would use next int, and a decimal number, use next double. Now that next double and next int, that is more convenient when you want to use arithmetic, right, on, or some math, right, on the input that the user gives. If you just want, a number and you don't really want to do any arithmetic or math with that, then you can use next line to do that as well. Okay. But for the most part, our programs are going to be making some calculations on things, and so we'll use next int or next double when we use scanner. Okay, let's take a look at this scanner example.java. Okay, so here this just shows some very basic use of the scanner class. So right up at the top, right? And remember, the purpose of this is to get input from the user, like most programs do. So right up there at the very top, you'll have an import statement, import java.util.scanner. All right, that goes above your class file. All right, and then here's the class header as usual. Okay, and so to use scanner, what you're going to have to do is to create a scanner object. Okay, so to create a scanner object, you would need to issue this line here. Really, if you look at this, this is nothing more than an assignment statement. Okay, although it's does contain some concepts that we haven't quite talked about yet. All right, but it's pretty much going to be the same every single time. Okay. Okay, so first off, I have scanner, and so that is just like any variable declaration, the type of the variable that I'm declaring. Here, I just pick a name. I just pick in because it's short, and it describes what the scanner does. It takes an input from some source, okay? And then the assignment operator, then the new keyword, which is something we haven't seen yet, and then scanner again, and inside parentheses we have system.in, okay? So for right now, there's some concepts that we haven't talked about with this stuff over here on the right-hand side of the assignment operator. So don't worry about that too much at the time being. This part here is always going to be the same for the time being. Okay. System.in does refer to the keyboard in this particular instance if you're on a desktop or laptop. Okay. All right. So next up, after you create your scanner object, then what you want to do is prompt the user to enter some input. If you don't prompt the user, they'll just kind of be left there hanging and they won't really know what to do. Okay, so you have to give the user some direction. Enter your name, okay? And so the user's going to type in their name, and then what happens is that we need to get that input using the scanner object, right? So the scanner object that we created up here is called in, right? And so I'm going to use that scanner object and then dot. Remember the dot notation says look at that thing. In this case, it's an object. Inside there, you will find a method, and I know it's a method because of the parentheses that come after the name. Okay, and so the next line method, what that does is get the information that the user typed in to the keyboard, right, as a string. Okay, so it goes and looks at the scanner object, right, and fishes whatever the user typed up to the enter key press, and then stores that as a string in whatever variable is over here. Right, so the user's going to type some stuff in. It's going to be captured as a string and then stored in this variable so we can use it later in the program. Okay. All right, so let's just run through, and you can see kind of how the basic functionality. So the user types in some information, enter your name, enter a whole number, enter a decimal number, and then here at the end, basically the program just spits out the stuff that the user typed in back to the user. Okay? All right, so we saw up until this part right here. All right, and so then I prompted the user again, hey, enter a whole number. All right, so in this case, you can see that what I'm using is next int, okay, because I want the user to enter a whole number. We didn't really do any math with that number, but still, this is just kind of showing you the basics of how to do this. So again, I use the scanner object that I created up here. Notice I don't have to, I can just use the same one, it doesn't matter. All right, and then I use next int to get the input as a as an int and then store it in this variable right here. Same thing here for next double. Okay, in this case I wanted to get a decimal number from the user, so I use the scanner object, which we called in dot next double. So that gets the value out as a decimal and stores it in whatever variable you have over here on the left hand side of this assignment statement. Okay, so that's it as far as the mechanics of how you would do that. You can print out here. I just have a line that prints this out and uses the information that the user typed in. Okay. One thing to be careful of here, if we run this, if the user types in some letters here, when we're using next int or next double, then that's going to crash the program. You can see it doesn't complete. All right. So for the time being, don't worry about those sorts of issues, right? Just assume that the user is perfect and types in exactly, what they, what is asked for. And, in reality, that's really the opposite of the truth, right? And in that the user doesn't always do what they are supposed to do correctly, okay? But for right now, we're just learning the basics, so let's just keep it simple and not worry about that. In practice, though, later on, we will have to talk about how we're going to avoid situations like what I just showed you, okay? How are we going to validate user input? But for the time being, don't worry about that. Okay, so next up, what I want to show you, I want to run through this entire thing again and using what's called Canvas. So you can do here, let's see, I always just use the shortcut, which is Control Shift R. Where's that at? Oh yeah, run in Canvas right here. Okay, so that's under build. When we run it in Canvas, this little viewer will pop up if you're using JGrasp. And then you can go step by step. You can see our program's kind of halted right here on this line 12 in the main method. So you can click this down arrow and it will execute that statement and that statement only. Okay. So it executed statement in line 12 and created a scanner object. You can see that scanner object is showing up over here in this under the debug tab in variables. All right, and what you can do is if you have a variable that's over there, you can drag it over to this canvas and kind of watch it change, okay, as the program runs. All right, so this is kind of what a scanner object looks like. Basically, it's a list of the characters that you type in the keyboard, okay? All right, so next up, I'm going to click the down arrow again, and you're going to see it's going to show enter your name. And now it is waiting for me to type some stuff in, okay? So I'm going to type in my name, T-O-M, right, and hit enter. As soon as I hit enter, you can see that those characters, those that I typed in, capital T, lowercase o, lowercase m, and then the enter key press corresponded to this /r and /n, okay? So there's two on my system, right? Things that come up when you type that in, right? So carriage return, line feed, all right? And so those come from that single enter key press on my system. All right, so the in.next line did its job. You can see that this position moved past all this stuff. So what happened was when I did this next line, that position moved all the way up here. So it took all of these characters, the T, the O, the M, right? And it stored it in this variable called name. Again, you can drag the name over here and see how that looks, okay? It disregarded, when you use next line, it disregards this enter key press, okay? All right, and the position was moved here. So we're going to keep going. Whole number. So I asked the user, hey, enter a whole number. You can see right now this is at position 5. So when I click the down arrow, it's waiting for me to type some things in. So I type in the number 24 and I'm going to hit enter. All right, and so next int, you can see now the position moved past the 24, okay, and it's here on position 7. So that 24, what next int did was get this number 24 out of the scanner object and then stored that in the whole number variable. It moved over 2 places. So you may have noticed that when I did next line, it consumed this /r and /n. In other words, it moved the pointer, the position all the way over here. It doesn't do that with ints, okay? You can see that enter key press is still inside of the scanner object. And that's going to cause some issues that we'll talk about in another video, okay? All right, and so then we are going to go down. All right, so it says enter a decimal. I type in a decimal number, hit enter, and you can see right there are those, there's the decimal number that I typed in, 23.23. You can see that what next double did, right, was get that 23.23. That's a legitimate decimal, right, a legitimate double value, and it stored it in this variable decimal number. We can see that by just dragging it over here, okay? All right, and then the last line in here, just prints out the values that I used, okay? So that's Canvas. It's extremely helpful when you are trying to figure out debugging, when you're debugging your program or just trying to figure out how something else works, okay? So again, you would do Control-Shift-R or go under the build menu and do run in Canvas, okay? All right. All right, so that's it for this video. In the next video, we're going to go through this in-class problem here.